Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Ocean's Pit, the little show about big things. I hope you guys are doing great because we have a great show for you guys today. Ocean's Pit's on Monday through Friday, 12 o'clock noon for a little lunchtime fun. And we have different guests on. The format hasn't changed. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have guests. Thursday, my lovely wife, Laura Ocean, is my co-host. Of course, Tuesday is just we talk about everything you guys ask me. You know, the show's been going good now for the last 3 years, and I appreciate everybody that watches. Now, everybody, remember, you can see the show on the Tony Ocean Show Facebook page, how you're seeing us right now, also on my personal page, the Mo Carrara page, also on Twitter and YouTube. So, but the guest we have today is top-notch, the best. I am so excited. I'm so hyped, man. This is so fantastic. We're going to get the legendary comic, Mr. Tom Dreesen. And before we bring him on, folks, check the website, TonyOceanMusic.com. Give us a call at 847-769-8609 to book a show. Now, let's get down, folks. First, let's take care of some sponsors. We're going to get them over with so we don't have to interrupt the interview. First of all, let's start off with our good friends, of course, McCampbell Law Group. Ron McCampbell, attorney at law, a statewide law practice that is client-focused and results-driven. Give Roy a call at 708-275-4264. Let's not forget our good buddies from Deutsch Power Center. That's right, Deutsch Power Center. Great Lakes servicing the construction and diesel industry in the Chicagoland area for the last 100 years. Call Deutsch Power Center at 224-276-6550. Don't forget Laura Ocean Solutions, everybody, increasing profits while reducing credit card fees. If you got a company that's using credit cards, check out Laura Ocean Solutions. She owns a company, and she'll make sure she'll beat any price you have. That's LauraOceanSolutions.com. Let's not forget our good buddies from Airtight Windows, ladies and gentlemen. Airtight Windows, siding and specialist, family-owned for 30 years for honesty and quality. Do it right with Airtight. My good buddy Lou, give him a call at 708-788-5000. Also, folks, don't forget Don Esteban Cigars. Get those hand-rolled cigars delivered right to your home, right from Tarpon Springs, Florida. Give Javier a call at 727-366-7536. And last but not least, let's not forget hair experts out of Rosemont, Illinois, recreating great hair days, Anthony and Carmela. Give them a call at 773-999-7888. On the bottom of the screen, you can log on right there to Twitter and watch the show there, Ocean's Pit, or you can go right to YouTube and watch it live on YouTube as we speak. So, a lot of good things to talk about today, but most importantly, we got my good friend, Mr. Tom Dreesen. And let me just tell you, man, he's going to be performing in Chicago at the Belushi Performance Hall. That's 425 Falwell Boulevard in Glen Ellen, Illinois. That's going to happen Saturday, September 10th. Now, doors open at 6. You can get tickets at themac.org, or you can call, of course, 630-942-4000. Tickets are at the door, folks. $35, $55, and $75 seats. Also, there's a meet and greet, $99, and it also includes a champagne toast with the legendary Tom Dreesen. This is going to be great. He's also going to be August 27th. We're performing at the Ocean Casino in Atlantic City, which I love Atlantic City. But you're going to love this. The man who made Sinatra laugh, Mr. Tom Dreesen, of course. And my good friend Tim, also, too, from the Illinois Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, will be here, too, on the show. So we're excited. Real fast, just I want to thank everybody that showed up yesterday at Bellagio in Roselle for the Laurie Children's Foundation, which we do the show every year, sold-out show. All the great entertainers that were there donating to a great foundation. We also do a lot for St. Jude's. So thank you, everybody, for showing up last night. Also, thank you for showing up at Positano's at the show in Oak Brook last night at 7 o'clock. Great sold-out show. Thank you, of course, the great Lisa P. and Rhino Ryan. Tonight we'll be at Chicago Prime Steakhouse in Schaumburg. That's an 8 o'clock hit with Jerry Jams. And tomorrow we'll be at Mars Resort in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin with Tony Toto and Rhino Ryan. Supposed to be raining, folks, but it's not going to rain all day. We hit at 4 o'clock, and we'll be outside, so we're excited. Remember, every show is dedicated to the first responders, the doctors, the nurses, the teachers, the farmers, the firemen, the policemen, et cetera, et cetera. It's mostly dedicated to people like you. So let's find out who's watching right now. It's great to see Tony Toto. We got Helen Tenuta. We have California. We have San Francisco, New Jersey, New York, Ohio. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ocean's Pit. And this is a great show, man, because I've got the legendary Tom Dreesen on the show. And his bio, folks, I mean, unbelievable. He started, folks, back in 1968 with a comedy act called Tim and Tom, folks. They were the very first biracial comedy team, of course, with Tim Reed, who later starred as our good buddy, of course, Venus Flytrap on WKRP in Cincinnati. That was the first biracial comedy team. Then, of course, he's been on 50 years, folks. And, of course, all these great music, 500 appearances on television, 60 on The Tonight Show, hosted the David Letterman Show. He opened for many years for Smokey Robinson, Liza Minnelli, Sammy Davis Jr. for 13 years, and, of course, the opening act for Mr. Frank Sinatra for many, many years. I had the privilege for opening for Mr. Tom Dreesen twice, once at the Arcada Theater with Ron Onesti, and once at the Park West with my good friend Tommy Furliano many years ago. And I've always seen, of course, you see him all the time. When Jilly's was around, I was there for 15 years. It was great. Best-selling author for a book called Still Standing, motivational speaker. And, folks, how about this? In 1989, Mr. Tom Dreesen recorded a comedy record called That White Boy's Crazy in front of an all-black audience in Harvey, Illinois, where he's from. That's fantastic. Just the stories alone. Been on television, Touched by an Angel, Columbo, Murder, She Wrote, Facts of Life, movies, of course, a lot of stuff he's done. So I'm excited. So, ladies and gentlemen, the legendary, folks, and he's from Harvey, Illinois. He's from our hometown. A good boy coming in, Mr. Tom Dreesen, everybody. Let's get him on here, folks. Hold on. Mr. Tom Dreesen, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Tony. How you doing?
Well, you know what? Thank you for being on, and then we'll bring up Tim on soon, very shortly. First of all, Mr. Dreesen, Tom, thank you so much for being on the show. I know you're a busy man. How are you doing, sir?
Life is great. I'm doing shows, performing. I'm doing I'm on a bookstore with the book that you mentioned, Still Standing. The subtitle is My Journey from the Streets and Saloons to the Stage. So I'm busy. But never mistake activity for achievement. But I'm very busy. I appreciate the fact you call me a legend. Somebody the other day introduced me as a legend. I said, "You know how you become a legend? How your critics are dead." That's how you
Well, Tom, if you can maybe come up a little closer, you're kind of coming in and out on your mic.
Oh, okay. How's this?
There you go. Perfect. All right, great. All right, Tom, I don't know where to start, sir. You've been doing it for so long from Harvey. You have a big family, Tom?
I had 8 brothers, and so there were 8 of us, 4 boys and 4 girls. And we grew up very poor in a shack behind a factory in Harvey, Illinois. We had no bathtub, no shower, no hot water. If the window broke, you stuck a rag in it. You had holes in your shoes, you put cardboard in it. I shined shoes in taverns. I set things in bowling alleys. I caddied. I sold newspapers on the corner, all to help feed my brothers and sisters, and none of this do I regret.
Unbelievable. That's incredible. Tom, when you were growing up, who influenced you? Did you always want to be a comic or an actor, anything like that?
It was the furthest thing from my mind. I never thought I'd be in show business. When I was shining shoes in all the bars in Harvey, there were 36 taverns in Harvey at that time, but there were 8 in my neighborhood. When I was shining shoes, Frank Sinatra was on the jukebox in all of those bars, and I was always a fan, about shining shoes. But I never dreamed that one day I would be, flying around the world in this private jet and performing on stages with 20,000 seat arenas, 40,000 seat arenas. It was just like a dream come true. Even though I never thought I'd be in show business. What influenced me most when I was growing up, while I was shining shoes in all the bars, my mother was a bartender at one of those bars. And I would go to her tavern last, where she was a bartender, and the owner was my uncle, Frank Presley. And he told jokes behind the bar. And that fascinated me.
Yeah, Tom, I didn't mean to interrupt. You need to come a little closer because you're still breaking up the people are saying.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put these headphones on and see if
there you go.
Okay.
Because you're breaking up, and we want everybody to be able to hear everything you're saying.
1 second.
Yeah. Got the legendary Tom Dreesen getting ready to come on, folks, here at Ocean Spit. And then my good buddy Tim will be joining us, too, from the Illinois Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is in Joliet, Illinois. I'm excited about that, folks. We need to go out there and see the Illinois Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We'll bring Tim on shortly. All right, so, Tom, I think we can hear you now better now. Great. So you know what, 50 years, 500 appearances, 60 times on Tonight Show. How was Johnny Carson? There you go, Tom. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now perfectly.
So there's no breaking up now, right?
No breaking up, folks. Good. Everybody's saying there's no breaking up on your end. Okay, that's great. Let's get that real fast, Tom. Johnny Carson, you've done over 60 times the Tonight Show. How was it being? Had to be nervous the first time with Johnny Carson?
Well, in 1975, wherever you went in America, in 1975, people say, "What do you do for a living?" You say, I'm a stand-up comedian. The next question out of their mouth was, "Oh yeah, have you ever been on Johnny Carson?" So in the eyes of America, you weren't a comedian yet unless you appeared on Johnny Carson show. So, after the comedy team split up, as you pointed out, that Tim Reed and I were America's first black and white comedy team. When the team split up, I went out to the West Coast because everybody, Freddie Prinze had done one appearance on the Tonight Show and got a sitcom the next day.
Right.
So all the comedians from around the country began to migrate out on the West Coast. And there was only one place you could get on stage. At that time, there was only one comedy room out there. It was called the Comedy Store. So we all went to the Comedy Store we had to audition to get on at the Comedy Store, which was a pressure because if you didn't score for the owner of the Comedy Store, Mitchie Shore, then it was back to Harvey, Illinois. It was, because there was no other game in town at that time. But fortunately, I ended up sleeping in a car. It's a long story, but I left my wife and kids in Chicago. I ended up sleeping in an old abandoned Nash Rambler where the front seat came down. I hitchhiked up and down Sunset Boulevard every day, begging to work for free at the Comedy Store. But I finally got on. I auditioned for her and passed, and I became a regular. And then I brought my family out here. I began to cultivate relationships with agents and managers out here, and finally got the Tonight Show to come and see me. And that night they were looking at three people, a comedy team called Bauman Eston, a new kid named Billy Crystal. I don't know whatever happened to him, but I'm on the Tony Ocean show right now, and he's not. and I passed the audition. They set me up to go do the Tonight Show. I got there on a Tuesday. They put me in makeup, sent me up to my dressing room, brought me down to the green room. I'm getting ready to go on, and they came in the green room and said, "We ran out of time. You have to come back next week." I came back the next week in makeup, up to my dressing room, back down to the green room, waiting to go on. They came in and said, "I'm sorry, we ran out of time again." 3 weeks in a row, they bumped me.
Oh my God!
The fourth time, I'm in the makeup room, and Fred DeCordova, the producer, came in. He said, "I got some bad news for you." I said, "What?" He said, "You're going on tonight."
Well, Tom, is it true that once you did your act, if Sinatra liked you, he'd give you a wave so you can come down and sit down next to him? Is that how it happened? Is that true?
Not Sinatra. You mean Johnny Carson?
No, Johnny Carson. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What happens is that first Tonight Show. Again, there's 26.5 million people that watch that show. And so the pressure when you're behind that curtain, every agent, manager, all the talent coordinators, all the Vegas promoters, all the Vegas bookers watched that show in those years. And so the pressure is enormous. But not only that, my mother had everybody back in Harvey, Illinois watching the show. So if I bomb, I can't even go back home,
Can't even go back home.
Yeah. So, but Johnny introduces you, you walk out, and I start getting laughs and more laughs. And before you know it, Johnny was laughing and Ed McMahon was laughing. And I finally finished my show. I finished my monologue. I had got 8 applause. And I said, "You've been a wonderful audience. Show business is a tough life. This is my first appearance on the Tonight Show. So I have to ask you a favor. If you like me, just if you like me, and you're Protestant, say a prayer. If you're Catholic, light a candle. If you're Jewish, somebody in your family owns a nightclub. Tell them about me, will you please?" And good night, everybody. And I go through the curtain, and the coordinator said, "Go back. Johnny's calling you back." So I went back out for a second bow. Johnny called me back, and he gave me that little circle. And I never stopped working from that moment on. After that show, a whole new world opened up to me. I was doing Dinah Shore, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Johnny Carson, Midnight Special, Rock Concert, Soul Train, American Bandstand, Hollywood Squares. All those shows were after me. I was the only white comedian ever to do Soul Train. But then in the meantime, Sammy Davis Jr. had a show called Sammy and Company, and he wanted me on that show. So when I did his show, I did a whole routine about growing up in Harvey, playing basketball on an all-black basketball team. I did those kind of routines. And he liked me, so he took me on the road for 3 years, Sammy Davis, excuse me. And then all the other artists, Smokey Robinson, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Natalie Cole, Frankie Avalon, James Darren, all those acts, singers needed a comedian that didn't work blue, didn't work dirty.
Sure.
In those days, there was no cable television. So comics couldn't even say go to hell on TV.
Yeah.
So you
Right.
had to work, you had to write material that could make grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and the kids laugh, So I was in a lot of demand of that. And then, of course, one day that led me to Sinatra.
That's unbelievable. But Tom, when you started out with Tim Reed in 1968, being the very first comedy biracial, that had to be, first of all, an incredible idea to put that together. Was that a fluke, how you guys just did that? And then how was it? Was it hard getting broke? Did you get any riffraff and all that? How did that all come about?
Now, I'll tell you, I never thought about being in show business, nor did Tim Reed. I wrote a drug education program teaching grade school children the ills of drug abuse with humor. It's a concept that I had, making the kids laugh and then planting the seeds of the ills of drug abuse. I was in the JCs, the civic group, the Harvey JCs. Tim Reed, again, how fate would have it, Tim Reed graduated from Norfolk State College. E.I. DuPont recruited him into Chicago to work as a marketing rep. The night I was proposing this drug education program, Tim, that was his first night there. After I proposed running it so the JCs could sanction it, to teach drug education at an 8th grade level, get the kids before they went into high school. Now, in those days, they weren't teaching drug education at a college or a high school level in schools, let alone at an elementary school level. So it was really an anomaly, So afterward, Tim Reed comes up to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to work with you on that project." And I said, "Gee, I already got a guy. Thank you." I had a white friend of mine named John DeBoer. The next day, as fate would have it, John DeBoer calls me and said, "Tom, I can't do that. I got a new job." I said, "Gee, what was that black guy's name?" "Oh, yeah, Tim Reed." Tim and I get together. We rehearse the program. We go into the schools. It became very successful in all the schools. And the JCs start using it in their model program and all their publications as a model program, And all of a sudden, it became very well-known nationwide. One day, and we made the kids laugh a lot, and then we planted the seeds of ills of drug abuse. One day, a little girl walking out of the classroom, an 8th grade girl, said, "You guys are funny. You ought to become a comedy team." And the thought of a black-white comedy team intrigued us. No one had ever done that before. So we said, "Hey, you want to do it?" "Yeah, I'll do it." But we didn't even know where to begin. We started writing what we thought was material. Again, there were no comedy clubs in those days. So where were we going to do this? We volunteered for charities. We got on stage anywhere we could. We eventually ended up in a club called the Golden Horseshoe in Chicago Heights, Illinois. And on the 4th performance we did, a guy put a lit cigarette out in Tim's face and then tried to beat the hell out of me. And I boxed when I was in the Navy, but this guy outweighed me by 100 pounds. And it was a Donnybrook, but we succeeded. We struggled on and on and on and on. And we ended up doing what they call the Chitlin Circuit, black-owned, black-operated nightclubs in Chicago, the High Chaparral, the Guys and Gals Lounge, the Cotton Club, the Burning Spear. We worked all those black clubs in Boston, Sugar Shack, in Detroit, the 20 Grand. That's where Motown was in those days. So all the Motown acts broke their action. The Motown groups broke their action at a place called the 20 Grand, owned by a gangster there, and the Club Harlem in Atlantic City before there was gambling. So we did that. Then we eventually did the Playboy Circuit, and then we were at Mr. Kelly's in Chicago, and
Sure.
we're doing real good. And then a woman broke up the act, and Tim decided to go off alone, and
that was it.
And we're still the best of friends to this day.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the legendary Tom Dreesen on Ocean's Pit today. Tom, look, television, movies. What did you like better? Did you like the movie part when you're doing the movie stuff, or television? Was it easier for you, or TV? Yeah, like that.
Movies and TV. I'm a stand-up comedian first, last, and always. I love stand-up comedy. So doing television as a stand-up comedian always was a joy for me. However, in movies, like, as you know, you're a live performer like I am. When you walk out, there's no cut. Can we do that again? You hit a clinker when you're singing, pal. I'm sorry, you hit a clinker. You can't.
Yeah.
You get in television, and I mean, not the Carson show was live, and there was no cut to that. But acting, you cut, let's do the scene again. Cut, we can do that scene again. It was just much easier, but much more tedious for me. I'm a live performer all my life, and that's really all I want to be. The movies, Clint Eastwood's a good friend of mine, and he cast me in a role with him in Trouble with the Curve.
Great movie, by the way. Great movie.
It's a lot of fun being with friends in film, people and actors that you've always admired, and now you're doing scenes with them. But there's nothing like stand-up comedy live.
Sure.
That's the joy of joys.
Tom, also, difference between Letterman when you did that and Carson, Tonight Show. I mean, two different shows, two different people. How was it difference in your opinion?
The difference between doing Carson and anybody was
Sure.
a Tonight Show was so demanding of a good stand-up performance. If you had one bad stand-up performance, chances are you might get called back. So the pressure was enormous to doing the Tonight Show. David Letterman's show, he never wanted me to do stand-up. He always wanted me to sit down and talk to him. I did over 50 appearances with David, and he enjoyed me being there because we started out together. Letterman and I were new comedians together when the comedy team split up, and I went out to the West Coast. I got established at the Comedy Store, and one night this kid from Indianapolis showed up in a red pickup truck and parked out in front and walked in to watch the comedians work. And I came off stage his first night there, and he said, "Oh, Mr. Dreesen, I really enjoyed your set." And I said, "Oh, what's your name?" "Dave." "Where you from?" "Dave, Indianapolis." And I'm so extroverted, I took it to him, not realizing he was kind of a shy guy. And we became friends. We played basketball together. We jogged together. We played on the same team together, basketball team. We just became very good friends. So when I went on his show, it was like, I never would see him before the show. When we walked out was the first time I would see him in 6 months or whatever it was since the last time I saw him. So it was always electric. We enjoyed each other's company,
And that's amazing. And then between Las Vegas, Tahoe, Reno, you've done them all. I mean, did you have a favorite spot out of all those nightclubs and casinos?
Yeah, I always loved Harrah's and Lake Tahoe. I just love Lake Tahoe, period. That was a great showroom, Harrah's and Lake Tahoe. However, when I worked there, I was under contract to 9 different hotels in Las Vegas, 7 with Frank Sinatra when I toured with Frank, and when I toured with, and a lot with Caesars, with Smokey Robinson and Sammy Davis Sr. But comedians I never liked Caesar's Palace for a comedian or the MGM Grand or even Bally's, but I love the Desert Inn, the Sands Hotel, the Riviera, the Golden Nugget downtown, because they had lower ceilings, and comedy, laughter is sound. It hits a ceiling and comes at you. So you set your timing off of that laughter. So those intimate rooms were so much better. Caesars had a high ceiling, and those days when you first went to Vegas, they used to serve dinner for the first show. The comedian would have to go out with waiters and waitresses hauling food in and out.
Yeah, sure. You know what? Louis Prima once quoted in a book saying he loved playing in the lounge instead of the big room because he was intimate more with the people. He loved the lounges much better.
By the way, when I first went to Vegas, it was 1977 with Sammy and later with Frank. What we did after we did our 2 shows, we went up and down the strip to the lounges all night long till dawn. Louis Prima and Keely Smith, the Treniers, It was so much fun. The lounge acts were just great. And then they would say to you, "Hey, look who's in the audience, Tommy Dreesen. Tommy, come up and give us 5 minutes of your stuff. And hey, Sammy, how about singing a song?" Those are the great years of Las Vegas.
Well, besides being a comic and an actor, like a stand-up comedian, just like you said, motivational speaker, you wrote a book called Still Standing, which is fantastic. Did you always want to do that? Someone asked you to do that, or did you always want to write a book?
All the years that I toured, Tony, ever since I first went in the show business, if ever something funny or poignant happened that night, I would go back to my room and I'd journal it. Something I wanted to remember. Meeting a very famous person who said something profound or something funny, or just something that happened to me personally. So I would journal it that I thought would be interesting later. I was never thinking about writing a book. I thought these would be stories I could tell my children one day and my grandchildren,
Sure.
about this wonderful business that I'm in. So anyhow, I compiled so many of them. As a matter of fact, I can show you. This is a big book. It said The Stories of My Life, and I kept all these things in this big book for years. And then I started putting them into chapters, and I thought, well, maybe one day I'll just do this for my kids, again, my grandkids. And I had all these chapters written, and I get a call one day from two guys, Johnny Russo and Darren Grubb. They said, hey, we would like to write a book about your life. We think you've lived a very interesting life. And from where you came from, let me digress. My one-man show, The Man Who Made Sinatra Laugh, it's like this little boy from Harvey, Illinois, who's shining shoes in Harvey, Illinois, and as a 10-year-old boy, and on the jukeboxes, he's hearing Frank Sinatra sing. And one day, that little boy from Harvey, Illinois, is carrying Frank Sinatra's coffin out of a church in Beverly Hills, California. So that's the journey I take them on. And that's what the book is all about. And so I told the guys, I've already got this book written, but you could certainly help me with the narrative and things like that. So we combined, became a partnership, and ended up with this book that now has over 400 5-star reviews on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I'm real proud of the book. It's got some revealing stories, and it's got a story in there, Tony, that'll make your hair stand on end. And I'm not going to tell you any more about it.
Okay.
It's because Frank Sinatra saved Johnny Carson's life from a mob hit. A guy named Crazy Joey Gallo wanted Johnny Carson dead. And no one could have saved him but Frank Sinatra. And I would have never told that story because Frank told it to me personally, and so did Jilly Rizzo. They both told me that story verbatim 3 weeks apart. And the only reason I put it in the book is because Johnny Carson's former lawyer, Henry Bushkin, tried to take credit for doing that. And he was about a 25-year-old lawyer at the time. Crazy Joey Gallo didn't listen to the Five Dons of New York. There was no way he was going to listen to a young lawyer.
Sure.
Only Frank Sinatra could have saved his life, and he did. But it's a hair-raising story, and it's too long to tell here, but it's in the book.
You got to get the book, folks. Still standing. We got the legendary Tom Andreessen on. It's going to be performing, everybody, at the Belushi Performance Hall, 425 Fall Road Boulevard in Glen Ellen. That's Saturday, September 10th. Before we bring Tim on and talk about other stuff as well, Tom, how do you get your inspiration for your jokes? And you're a comedian. Is that real stuff that happens to you? I mean, it's got to be. Is it hard to keep stuff fresh? And how does that all work?
Yeah. By the way, that's to do the Tonight Show. Every time you did the Tonight Show, you had to come up with a new 6 minutes. And Johnny didn't want two guys going to bar jokes. He wanted original monologues. And the same way with Frank Sinatra. The reason Frank wanted me around all those years was because we appeared in the same cities, year in, year out. And he wanted a comedian that could come up with new material. And he would listen in the wings while I was performing. So I was asked a question a while back that I've never been asked in 52 years in show business. The guy said, are you a comedian who's a writer, or are you a writer who's a comedian?
Yeah.
I said, well, that's a good question. Because I'm a comedian who's a writer because I love stand-up comedy. Writing is a chore, but I can write. So I'm a comedian who's a writer. So I always, new material was always about what's going on in my life. If when I went through a divorce, that was a material.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure.
A lot of the tragedies in your life is material. When you're writing a joke, and if you dissect comedy, it gets boring. But there's two things when you're writing a joke. Number one, comedy is 9/10 surprise. The audience laughs because they didn't think you were going to say that. So the setup line has to hide the punchline. And the other rule is there are no victimless jokes. Who's the victim in a joke? Me, you, the government, the airlines, your daughter's dating a punk rocker, whatever's going on in your life. Somebody's got to be the victim in this joke.
Something has to be the victim. Absolutely. And then what a genius idea. In 1989, you came up with the comedy record, That White Boy's Crazy, and you did it in front of an all-black audience in Harvey. Was that someone that put you up to that? And you said, oh, let's do this. I mean, at that time, that's just fantastic. I don't think anybody's done that before, have they?
No, and the reason why I did it, because I grew up in Harvey, Illinois. I played basketball on an all-black basketball team. I grew up I was shining shoes with black kids in my neighborhood. I grew up with black kids. I honestly, this sounds so corny, but I honestly never saw color. When I was a little boy growing up, I saw the person. He was a good friend or he wasn't a good friend, And so I grew up around black kids all my life. And then when I start working all black clubs with Tim, a lot of the routines I wrote in our and Tim also wrote, but a lot of it was about that thing about me growing up in an all black situation. So when I first started doing the Tonight Show after the team split up, I would do routines about playing basketball on an all-black basketball team, playing football on an all-black football team. I did these kind of routines of being the only white boy in an all-black situation. And every time I did the Tonight Show or Merv Griffin show or Dinah Shore show or something, and I did those routines, white people would say to me, do black people laugh at your material? Do black people laugh at your material? I got so tired of explaining that I worked all black clubs for years, all these black clubs that I worked, where I was the only white guy in the audience. So I went and cut an album in Harvey, Illinois, in front of an all-black audience. And whenever they'd say, do black people laugh at your material? I'd whip out a CD and say, give me $10.99 and you can find out for yourself, you know.
For yourself. Oh, yeah, what a concept that was.
Tony, I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to say something. Whenever somebody says something to me, do black people laugh at your material? I always say, what color is laughter? What's the color of laughter? If you're funny, you're funny. When a black comedian comes in front of an all-white audience, you know, do we because we're white, we don't understand what's funny to a black kid? You know, it's a stupid remark. You know what? That's why I say, what color is laughter? Anyway.
Yeah, and it's almost like with music and comedy. You know, there's different acts, there's music, there's comedy. I agree with you. It makes complete sense when someone says something like that. Tom, also being in the business as long as you have, is the camaraderie with other comics? Does that happen? Like musicians get together, do comics get together? Is there a little standoffish thing when it comes to comedy? Because there's been so many great ones. How do you talk about that?
Well, you usually stay friends with all those you started out with. I'm still friends with Jay Leno, with David Letterman. David, real close to me. You know, all the people that I started out with, I still am friends with. What's interesting is that comics will oftentimes, after shows, like singers, we like hanging out, you know, after the shows. With Frank Sinatra, he never went to bed till the sun came up. He was nocturnal. So he loved to hang out, you know, and he wanted you to hang with him.
Sure.
One of the biggest laughs I ever got from him, we did about 10 one-nighters around the country, and now we've stopped. We've come into Vegas. We're working at the Desert Inn. We did 2 shows that night. And it was 4:30 in the morning, and he's going strong, talking. He loved to stay up till dawn. At 4:30 in the morning, I got up from the table. He said, hey, where you going? I said, I'm going to bed. He said, why? I said, I got to get up early in the morning and go to the cemetery and visit those guys. He said, what guys? I said, all those guys who died trying to stay with you every night, you know. He thought that was hysterical. He never repeat that. But, so we stay together. We you know, comics stay together. And after the show is when we like to hang out and ask each other questions. But what's funny was 45 years ago at the main room in the Comedy Store, when I'm working on new material, I was working with the hottest comics of that time. David Letterman, Jay Leno, Robin Williams, Gallagher, Michael Keaton, and Elaine Boozler, you know. And then last weekend, I was at the main room in the Comedy Store working on new material with Sebastian Maniscalco, Bill Burr, the hot comic at that time. It's like I just keep staying through time. You know, and then afterward, what do? We sit and we talk. Sebastian and I talk about Chicago, of course.
Sure.
Chicago and yeah. So yeah, we hang. You know.
Well, you know what? Now everybody knows about the Sinatra thing. How, if you don't mind me asking, how did that come about? What was it like working for Mr. Sinatra? I mean, my God. I mean, it's like there's not too many. It's the Beatles, Elvis, the Beatles, and then Frank. I mean, how did that all come about?
See, I would change that. I put Frank.
Yeah, true. Absolutely. I'm there too. Yes.
The greatest career show business has ever known. Not because he's my friend, not at all because of that. Frank Sinatra transcended show business. First of all, the greatest pop singer of all time. No one's going to argue that, or they shouldn't anyhow.
Sure.
But then, what about, he was an actor. He won the Academy Award. I once sat with him, Gregory Peck, Kirk Douglas, Clint Eastwood, Jack Lemmon. We're all sitting around, Robert Wagner. They were talking film and directing, and I was fascinated by this because I'm a kid from Harvey, Illinois. These were people I saw in the movies when I was growing up. I just sat back and listened to them, but I noticed they were showing great reverence to Frank. And all of a sudden, I said, I wonder who he studied with, because in Hollywood, they like to tell you, you know, I studied with Stella Adler or, you know, some famous teacher.
Sure.
So I said to Frank, did you study acting? And Gregory Peck grabbed my arm real hard. He said, acting lessons would have ruined him. He was a diamond in the rough you didn't fool with. You know, this is a guy who danced with Gene Kelly, for God's sake.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, when you gave Frank a song, to him it was a script. What did the writer feel the night the writer took pen in hand? Frank would immerse himself in that lyric and become that lonely guy in a bar whose woman left him and he's never going to find love again. And
Love
you
again.
felt that. You felt that. And the joy of the song. So he was head and shoulders above all of them. But what it was like, how it began was I was working with Smokey Robinson at Caesars in Lake Tahoe. Frank was appearing next door at Harrah's. And I had worked Harrah's many times. So one night, the 7 nights I was going to be at Caesars, why I chose this night, again, fate. I think on Wednesday night I'll run over and catch Frank. I came off stage that night at Caesars and I didn't even change out of my stage clothes, and Harrah's is 2 casinos over. So I went out the side door and I ran over to Harrah's. I was running into the showroom to catch Frank. I didn't want to miss his opening because Frank Sinatra created more excitement walking to the microphone than most people do with their whole act. You know, it's just him watching him. I'd seen him perform when he walked out. The crowd would go wild just seeing him, you know, before he sang a note, you know.
Yes.
So I'm rushing into the showroom, and the vice president of Harrah's Hotel was out in front, a man named Holmes Hendrickson, with a big guy with a cigar. And Holmes said to me, "Come here, Tommy." I went over reluctantly, and he said, "Tommy, this is Mickey Rudin." Well, I recognize the name. That's Frank Sinatra's lawyer. He's a powerful guy in our business. So he said, "Mickey, this is Tom Dreesen, and I think Tom would make a great opening act for Frank Sinatra." And the lawyer got a pained expression on his face like he heard that a million times.
That's
He
right.
said, "Hey, kid, if I gave you," and he winked at the vice president, but I caught the wink. He said, "Hey, kid, if I gave you a week with Frank Sinatra, would you want more than 50,000? I said, "Mr. Rudin, put it this way. If you gave me a week with Frank Sinatra, would you want more than 50,000? He said, "Oh, I like this kid." And I made him laugh. And they hired me to do 1 week with Frank Sinatra at the Golden Nugget in Atlantic City. And I thought, great, I'll get my picture taken and I'll try to, and I'll hang it in every bar back in Chicago, you know. And then the second night I was with him, he and his wife Barbara took me out to dinner, and I can remember like it was yesterday, Tony. He set his knife and his fork down. He looked at me. He said, "I like your material and I like your style. I'd like you to do a few other dates with me if you're interested." And I didn't say, "Let me check my calendar." I said, "Yeah, I'm in." So it turned into 14 years of 45, 50 cities a year. And I stayed in his home 6 times a year in a compound down in the Rancho Mirage. I was a pallbearer at his funeral, and I miss him every day of my life. But one more quick thing I want to tell you. You said, what's it like opening for Frank Sinatra?
Yes.
20,000 seat arenas, Tony. I'm going to say to you, and you're a performer, you'll understand. I say, Tony, this is what happened to me. 5 minutes before you're going on, there's 20,000 seats out there, and you're in the round. They're not proscenium in front of you. They're
Sure.
all around. I said, "Tony, I want you to go out there, and for the next 45 minutes, there's 20,000 people out there. I want you to stand in the middle of that arena, and I want you to hold their attention for the next 45 minutes. Oh, one more thing, Tony. I want you to hold their attention, but I want you to make them laugh for the next 45 minutes. Oh, one more thing, Tony. I want you to make them laugh when you want them to laugh. I want you to pull the strings on the emotions of 20,000 people. No props, no tricks, no charts, no special arrangement, no special lighting, no orchestra, nothing. Just you and 20,000 people. And one more thing, Tony. Not one of them came to see you."
Yeah, and then you went out and do what you did. We got the legendary Tom Dreesen on, folks, performing September 10th at the Belushi Performance Hall in Glen Ellen, folks. We got tickets at themac.org, folks, or you can go get them. Call at 630-942-4000. You can also get tickets at the door, but it's going to be great. A meet and greet the great Tom Dreesen, folks. We also, let's bring on Timmy's been waiting here for a little bit. Let's get Tim on here too. What we got him. Tim, are you on there too, sir? Tim, can we hear you?
We can see you, Tim.
We can see you, Tim. We just can't hear you. All right. Well, let's see till he gets us going. There you go, Tim. Are you on?
Yeah, he's got to put headphones on like me, I think.
Maybe you should put some headphones on there, Tim. In the meantime, while you got that going, we got Mr. Tom Dreesen on, ladies and gentlemen. Atlantic City, going to be there August 27th at the Ocean Casino. Tom, while we're waiting for Tim there, what do you think of the comedy now with the comics? I mean, they're out there. I mean, I don't know. Does anybody stand up? Like, I just don't see it anymore.
Well, Sebastian, Bill Burr,
Yes.
I love them. There's a lot of great comedians out there. The thing that's different today from then is years ago, somebody would say, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" You'd say, "I'm a stand-up comedian." They'd say, "Oh, Martha, honey, come here, Martha. Martha, he's a stand-up comedian, Martha." Here's what they say today. What do you do for a living? You say, I'm a stand-up comedian. They say, yeah, so's my dentist. My dentist does it on weekends. My wife's gynecologist is a comedian too. Everybody's a comedian today. And the main difference is, of course, the language. When I
Yes.
started out, there was no cable television. So, how do you get known in the world? You had to get on the Tonight Show. How do you get on the Tonight Show? You had to learn to work clean. You couldn't swear, today because of cable. I'll tell you a quick funny story. I was at the Laugh Factory about 2 weeks ago, and there were two young comedians around the corner, and I didn't know they were there. I was upstairs. I was looking at my notes. I was going to try out some new material, and I heard one of them say, hey, Tom Dreesen's here. So my ears perked up, of course. And the other kid said, yeah, he's, what he said, yeah, Tom Dreesen, he said, yeah, he's old school. That's what he said. And the other comedian said, old school, what do you mean? He said, well, he doesn't use the F word. The other comedian said, he doesn't use the F word. What does he use for adjectives? And I stuck my head around the corner and I said, adjectives. That's what I use for adjectives. Now, I'm not Tony, I'm a street guy. You know that. I don't have a degree from academia. I got a doctorate from the streets. I grew up on the streets. So I know every dirty joke there ever was, and I can do a stag roast with the best of them. But I couldn't make any money when I started out working that way. Today, because of cable television, comics have schooled every young person in the world that you can say the F word, you can say whatever you want to say, and it's okay. And I'm not against that because I'm for freedom of speech. But sure. I couldn't do it business-wise. I would have never got where I got. I would have never been able to open for Sammy, Smokey, Frank, all of those other acts. I would have never gotten that opportunity in those days.
Yeah, and because you see a lot of them out there, like you said, with the language that were out there. They're very popular. But you're right. It looks like the acts that you opened for wouldn't allow that type of entertainment, and that's why you're funny. Family and people like that want to see and want to enjoy, they want to have a good time with that. Tom, I'm telling you, you've been around so long doing what you're doing. What keeps you motivated? What is it that you still want to do this?
I love making people laugh. Years ago, I wrote a poem, and I'm not going to do it for you, but it was called "The Sound of Laughter." And the opening lines are, as far back as I can remember, or shortly thereafter, I love to hear the sound of laughter. Now, and by the way, that poem is at the end of my book. But I think the greatest thing in the world, and Tony, I don't have to tell you because you're doing it, is to find the work that you love. To find the work that you love. The Irish had a saying, I can't remember how it goes, but the second you come out of the womb, God whispers in your ear what it is he wants you to do. And you search the rest of your life for that whisper, but when you find it, the wind gets at your back. The first time I made people laugh, when I was with Tim Reed, the first time I went on stage with Tim, something I had written got a laugh. And it was like one of those B movies where the dark clouds open up and the sun bursts through. And my whole being went, yeah, oh, yeah, this is what I want to do. Tony, I'll tell you the truth. That was a Friday night. I'd been wandering aimlessly ever since I came out of the service, 4 years in the service, had a wife and 3 kids, going from job to job to job. That moment, that epiphany hit me that I wanted to make people laugh. It was a Friday night. The next morning, I got up and I couldn't sleep all night long. I lived in Harvey at the time. I went to Ascension Church, where I had been an altar boy when I was growing up, where I sang in the choir. And I went to church. Church was empty. It was a Saturday morning. And I prayed. I said, God, now I know what I want. I know what I want. I want to be a stand-up comedian. God, if you let me make my living as a stand-up comedian, I'll never ask for anything else. I'll do charities. I was making all these promises, And that was September 1969. In September 2019, I went back to Ascension Church, and I gave the sermon on the power of prayer. And I told the congregation right there where I knelt, this is what I asked, and all my prayers have been answered. I've been making my living as a stand-up comedian for all these years.
Tom, what, in your opinion, what happened to Las Vegas?
Corporate America, and probably for the right reasons. When the corporations took over, when I went to Vegas, a lot of the guys owned it. It was a different town, But also, if a couple went to Las Vegas in those days for 5 days, they saw probably 8 shows. They would go to the dinner show in one hotel, and they'd leave there, get in a cab, and drive down to another hotel and go see the late show there. So and every entertainer on that strip, now that strip all the way down would have singer, comic, comic, singer, all the way up on both sides. Every entertainer at the end of the show say, "Hey, thank you very much, and I hope you go down the street and catch my buddy Dean, or make sure you see Tom Jones or Engelbert Humperdinck." They would, each entertainer would try to get you to go see the other shows. So that's what it's like. Today, they design the hotels because of corporate America so huge. Like if you go to Caesar's Palace, they've got a shopping center, and they're in the old Rome. When you go to the shopping center, you're wandering the streets of Rome, and they've got Italian restaurants, Chinese restaurants, Japanese restaurants. They've got French restaurants, steakhouses. They've got all sorts of activity shopping centers. So in 4 or 5 days, you finally have seen everything in that hotel. And if you want to leave there, they got a crosswalk to their sister hotel. So, so
it's all combined all together. Absolutely.
It's a whole, and it's a different world. I personally like the old days because it was more intimate, but nonetheless, Vegas is sold out right now.
It is. Tom, we have the legendary Tom Dreesen on, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll be at the beautiful Belushi Performance Hall on Saturday, September 10th. Tom, what's the difference between performing in the United States and then in Europe when you're overseas with Frank and that, or in general when you do that? Are the audiences different there? I know everybody wants to laugh, but is it different there?
Yeah, only overseas I performed in London, in England, and it's just colloquialisms, that they speak the same language as us, but somewhat differently. So you have to learn that the phone is the telly and the elevator is the lift, and those kind of things. But they truly like American comedians over there, as we like English comedians here. That's the only difference.
Yeah. It's if somebody new, some young comics are watching, or you bump into somebody new that's starting, and you see somebody that give you advice, Tom, what would you say to somebody right now if he wants to get into this profession?
Well, I'd say number one, start where you are. If you live in Toledo, start there. Start where you are. Work as often as you can. If you can, read the book The Magic of Believing by Claude Bristol. If you can't believe in yourself, how do you expect the audience to believe in you? Number 4, realize no one is ever going to help you. You have to do it on your own. I have a sign on my desk right now that said, if it is to be, it's up to me. Once you get marketable, that people can make money off of you, then they'll help you. They're helping themselves because they're helping to make money for themselves as well. So you got to become a product that can be marketable. So work as often as you can. Get up on stages anywhere. Beg for charities. Tell people I'll MC your charity. Whatever. Get as much stage presence as you can. And then 5, don't ever quit. If this is your dream, we're on this planet for just a blink of an eye. In the annals of time, this planet's been here 5 billion years. It's going to be here another 5 billion after we die. So your lifetime is a blink of an eye, a speck of sand. Don't spend that speck of sand, that blink of an eye, chasing a dream that was your mom and dad's, but not yours. If it was, if you have a dream, chase that dream. Don't give up. Bertrand Russell once said, there are people in show business who become major stars simply because they didn't have sense enough to quit when they should have. That's your story, Tony. That's my story. We should have quit so many times, but we didn't, because we so loved what we were doing, and we believed this is what we were put here to do. You were put here to sing, and I was put here to make people laugh. So I wasn't going to give up on that dream. And when you read my book, you'll see my wife left me several times in my life. Took my children and took my, because I wanted to be a comedian. I don't blame her. She didn't marry a comedian. She married a guy who had a job and bring a check home every Friday. This precarious business. But so I was knocked out. The reason why the book is called Still Standing, I've been a stand-up comedian for 52 years now. But I've been knocked down in my life so many times, but I kept getting back up again. Physically knocked down, by the way, which you're reading about, as well as literally. But so that's what I'd say to you. If this is your dream, don't let anybody talk you out of it. Go for it.
Do you think that, Tom, there's a difference for a woman comic or a man comic? Is it harder for them to make it, or at this time?
There used to be. When I started out, there were very few women stand-ups. And most of the women that did it, Phyllis Diller, and then it was a lot of self-deprecating material. And then women began to emerge, and more and more and more. And now we have some solid female stand-up comedians. Whitney Cummings, who I just worked with last week at the Comedy Store. There's a lot of great female stand-ups out there. And so it's getting. And then of course Ellen, who went on to have her own show. And also, again, the women, there's women that use language today that Red Fox wouldn't use.
I got with the language. Yeah, I've seen one lady, Lisa Lampanelli. Boy,
Oh,
stuff that came out of her mouth, unbelievable. I think we finally got Tim on. Tim, are you on here, sir? Let's see.
he still can't be heard.
Okay, wait a minute. Let's go get Tim on. Tim, are you on, sir? Tim, we still can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Hey, that's either Tim or Brad Pitt. I'm not sure. Is that Brad Pitt?
There you go. Tim heard that one. He heard that one. Tim, of course, is one of the directors of the Illinois Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Joliet, and wish we tried to get his vocal. We just can't hear your voice, Tim. But how did Tom? We got some time here with Tim. How did you? Have you been to the Belushi Performance Hall before? This is the first time?
No, this is my first time. I'm really excited about it. It was Tim's suggestion. Tim's worked so hard on getting this show set up, and he continues to work on it. He chose the site, and I've never been there before, but I'm excited. I knew John Belushi, of course, and I know Jim Belushi now. Chicago guys, we bond when we come out to the West Coast, so I'm
okay. Now we're
excited about going there for my first time, and tirelessly. I'm going to have to run here in a few minutes. I hope we can get Tim.
Tim, I'm trying to get Tim on from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We just can't hear you, Tim. Can you see if you're on? I don't know, your mic, something. We're just trying to get Tim on from the Illinois Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm so sorry, Tim. I don't understand what the problem is here, but let's see. We got a couple questions from people here. Yeah, we got some people. Tom, have you ever met Elvis Presley?
No, my biggest regret in life was that, because I was a fan of Elvis, but I never even got a chance to see his show. We never timed it at the right time. I flew back from London one time with Priscilla and their daughter, and I couldn't take my eyes off of her. She looked so much like Elvis. She was like 10 years old at that time, and she had Elvis's face in those days. I found that amazing,
Well, that was a question there. Another one asked here from Ronnie here. Tell us about how long you got. How did you get the celebrity golf tournament that you do in Lake Tahoe every year? Well, how did that all come about?
When I was a kid caddying, I fell in love with the game of golf, and so years later, I started playing. Bob Hope saw me on Tonight Show one night and put me on at the Bob Hope Golf Classic. He let me come and play in that, which was really exciting. I'll tell you a quick funny story. The first day I'm playing with Arnold Palmer, I didn't realize I hadn't played golf in a long time. So I go out to the first tee, and they have a pro and then a celebrity, and then two amateurs. And we're getting ready to tee up. There's people, thousands of people lined up there. And this one guy walks up to me. He's one of the amateurs in my group. I said, "Hi, I'm Tom Dreesen." He said, "Hi, Tom. My name is Hoot McInerney." He said, "I sure hope we get a good celebrity. Last year we got some guy I never heard of."
Oh, that's pretty good. Did you ever think of getting into a sitcom of any kind?
Yeah, I tell you the truth. I turned down more sitcoms than most comedians get offered in a lifetime. In the years that I was touring with Frank, as your viewer said, I was playing on a golf tour called the Celebrity Golf Association. It was called. And later it was CPT, Celebrity Players Tour. We were doing 12 cities a year. It was basketball, baseball, football, hockey, tennis, and show business people that were 10 handicap or below. So it was Johnny Bench, Mike Schmidt, Mario Lemieux, John Elway, Dan Marino, Michael Jordan. We had 42 Hall of Famers. In show business, it was me, Matt Lauer, Brian Gumbel, Eddie Marinero, Smokey Robinson. So I was the only comedian on that tour. And at the same time, I'm touring with Frank Sinatra, flying in his private jet all over the world, appearing on stage with Frank Sinatra. If you would have said to me when I was a little boy growing up, when I played a lot of sports, excuse me, if you'd have said one day when you grow up, you're going to get inside of an arena and you're going to compete against the greatest athletes who lived in your lifetime, I'd have said that's impossible. But I was doing that in golf. And then if you'd have said to me when I was shining shoes here in Sinatra in a jukebox, one day you're going to be flying all over the world, appearing on stages with Frank Sinatra, I'd have said that's impossible. But I was doing both of those things. Christopher Morley, the author, said, success is living the life you want. I was living the life I wanted. when they came to me and offered me sitcoms, that would mean I'd have to quit flying around with Frank, and I'd have to, quit playing, competing against all these great athletes who I admired. And I thought, nah, in the end of your life, Tony, as you know, all you have are memories at the end of your life. Make some good ones.
Yeah, and you know what? You've got with your book and everything you've done, you have tons of memories, and you've been around so long and still entertaining people. The man who made Sinatra laugh is something that not many people can actually say, and you've done that for so many years. Tim, you can hear us, Tim? Maybe can you say something? Anything yet? You know what, Tim? I'm going to do, Tim. I'm going to have you. Why don't I have you on the show on Monday? And we'll have you on the show on Monday, and we'll talk to you. Let's do that. We'll set it up. We still got a couple minutes left here.
Tim, get some headphones when you do, because I think I had the same problem as you. You got to plug headphones into your computer.
Yeah, we'll put some headphones on, and we'll have Tim on Monday. Monday, if you got no plans, Tim, we'll have you on the show on Monday. The great Tom Dreesen is, if you were asked, Tom, do you have a favorite comic? Is there someone that you say, boy, this guy's just fantastic, or this one is just
today? Fantastic. I mean, how can you go wrong with it? I like Bill Burr. I like Joe Rogan. I like Sebastian. From my hometown. There's so many comedians out there that I love. Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock knocks me out. And of course Jay Leno, who's a great stand-up comedian. There's many, but I love
high school comedians.
Well, when I started out, there was two people that I really watched: Jack Benny and Richard Pryor. Now I say it for two different reasons, two totally different comedians. Jack Benny, because Jack Benny made comedy look easy. A person becomes an artist in any endeavor, truck driver, bricklayer, singer, whatever, when you make your work look, one word, effortless. Jack Benny made comedy look easy. And it isn't easy, but he made it look, it was a conversation, not a presentation. Is it your act? You damn right it's your act. It's your job to make it look like it's not an act. He made it look easy. So I admired that. And also Richard Pryor, I grew up in Harvey. Richard Pryor spoke for my soul.
He was from Peoria, wasn't he? From Peoria, Illinois.
From Peoria, Illinois. But he was like me, hanging out with the brothers back in Harvey. Like standing on the street corner with all the conversation. So both of those, and I got to know both of them. And Richard was the one when I did that album, That White Boy Is Crazy. He wanted me to call the album That Honky's Crazy.
Yeah,
I said, Richard, I would.
He put a record out too, and he used the N-word on his record. That N-word is crazy. That Richard did. He put a record out with that.
That's why he wanted me to call it That Honky's Crazy. I told him, I said, Richard, nobody in Harvey, all the black guys in Harvey, never call me honky. They call me white boy, affectionately. Yeah. Even today, if I go back there now and they're talking about a football game we played or something, they'd say, I scored 3 touchdowns that day. White boy was there. Right? White boy, come here. White boy, tell him. So I was 13 years old when I found out my name wasn't White Boy.
Yeah, we got the legendary Tom Dreesen. I have time for one more question. Tom, what about when you might hear another comic, or back in the day, how did everybody stop from using other people's material? Did that happen a lot? I mean, how did that all work out?
Well, the way you stopped them was you took them around the back and beat the hell out of them if you could.
Okay. Right. Yes. Someone said Milton Berle used to steal everybody's jokes.
Someone said, everyone said. That Milton, he was that way. See, you can't copyright comedy material. You can't do anything about it. I have so many jokes stolen from me in my lifetime because I had to keep writing new material for the Tonight Show. There were a lot of comics around the country, or writers, that would watch that show and they would write the joke down. You can't do anything about it. They can't steal your personality. They can't steal your timing, or your likability, whatever it is. So it's nothing you can do about it.
Sure.
You years ago, you could protect it a little bit because there was so little television. Today, it's so spread out, that I honestly have, Tony, guys who called me trying to sell me a joke that I wrote in 1977.
That's so funny, ladies and gentlemen. Ocean's Pick, the little show about big things. The legendary Tom Dreesen. I know we have friends in New Jersey. He's going to be at the Ocean Casino in Atlantic City on Saturday, August 27th, which actually is next Saturday. But then, folks, everybody from the Chicagoland area, you want to get your butts down to the Belushi Performance Hall, 425 Fowler Boulevard in Glen Ellen, Illinois. It's Saturday, September 10th. Tickets are $35, $55, and $75, folks. There's also a great meet and greet with a champagne toast. That's $99. That's worth it, folks. Spend the extra money. Get the meet and greet. Come on, you can get some great stories with Tom. You can also call 630-942-4000. Tickets are available at the door. Doors open at 6. Show starts at 7. And you get tickets at themac.org. Ladies and gentlemen, and go out and get the book, Still Standing, by the legendary Tom Dreesen. And please go out and support a comedy and music. And it's down at the end. I got time for one last sponsor here before we sign off. Patriot Funding Incorporated, everybody. Commercial money lending at its finest when timing is everything. Patriot Funding Incorporated. Call Dave Antonelli at 630-675-4730. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank Mr. Tom Dreesen and Tim from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're going to get him, Illinois Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're going to get Tim on Monday, and we're going to give you that hour, and you can talk about that. But I want to thank you, sir, for doing what you do, Mr. Dreesen, and thank you for always being kind when you I see you on the streets. I used to see you at Jilly's, walk by all the time, and thank you for your time on that. Thank you for having me open for you at the Park West and at the Arcada Theater many years ago, and I hope maybe we can do something together in the future. But thank you so much for what you do. And, folks, we got to go. Remember, support local entertainment, support live establishments, support everybody, man. Remember, buy local, shop local, and the great words of Richard Starkey, Sir Ringo Starr, peace and love, folks. Tonight we'll be at Chicago Prime Steakhouse in Schaumburg. Tomorrow, Mars Resort in Lake Geneva. And got a lot more stuff. Check the website, TonyOceanMusic.com. And, Tom, do you have a website you want to tell people how to get a hold of you if they want to book the Tom Dreesen Show?
Yeah, TomDreesen.com. That's simple. TomDreesen.com. You can go there, and there's a lot of information on there and a lot of stuff that you might enjoy, too, as well. Tony, it's so great to see you. I loved hearing you sing. When you opened for me, that was one thing. But when I'd go into Jilly's after a tough night and just sitting there and hear you sing, it was just great. And I hope that we can do that again soon.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Tom Dreesen, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Tim, from the Illinois Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Tim, we couldn't hear him, but we'll hear him on Monday. That's for sure. We'll be back, folks. Make sure you guys have an incredible weekend. Be kind, everybody out there. The world is really screwed up right now. So if you have any beefs out there, try to make it better, man. Try to be cool. God bless you, everybody. Have a great weekend. So long. Thank you so much.